Okay, this lesson we're looking through at the concept of selection. So let's get into it. So the idea that we look at is a statement being true or false. We need to be able to choose whether it's right or wrong. So we're going to be going through looking at these conditional statements and identifying whether it's true or false. So that is what selection is all about. It allows us to control the flow of a sequence, and it allows us to be able to have branches in that program. So let's look at this idea. So if we have true or false, looking at this card, the color of this card is black. True or false? Hopefully you'll say it is true because the color of the writing and the spades is black. Let's look at the next one. The suit of this card is hearts. You should identify that statement as false. The card of the value, I can't speak. The value of this card is greater than 5. Now, this one's a little bit trickier. We should be saying that one is false, because the reason it is false is it's 5, not greater than 5. We would need to be saying it's equal to or greater than 5 for that statement to be true. So let's have a look at this next structure. So when we do this in programming, we have what we call an if statement. So you evaluated true or false. So if the card is a heart and is true, we stand next to true. Otherwise, we stand next to false. So whatever these responses are can be one or the other. So let's have a little go at this game. So if the character has a hat, so if that is true, we remove them from the game. Otherwise, they keep in the game. So you guys have this in your OneNote. So we're going to play along here. If they have a hat, remove them from the game. So I'm just going to cross mine out. So then we continue through. So this is how it looks in Scratch. So if the character's hand is empty, then we remove them from the game. Otherwise, we keep them in the game. So there's one that we remove. Off they go. And now we look at if the character has a sword, then remove them from the game. Otherwise, we keep them in the game. So one more gets removed. And we are left with our final character. So looking at our activity now. So we're going to be going through looking at a chatbot called Big Ed. And we're going to be working in pairs to be able to go through. So we're going to have a look at what this looks like in our OneNote in a moment. But basically, the first part we're doing is predicting, looking at the code and considering what is going to happen. And then we're going to have a discussion about, were your predictions correct? Was there anything surprising? Or did you miss or forget anything with it? So let's go across to it. So we're in our OneNote. We can see we can go and access our PowerPoint over here if we need. But you've already done your guess who, hopefully. And now we're into our chat with Big Ed. So if we go a little bit further down, first step we're going to do is predict. So let's have a look at this and what we think might happen. So starting off, we know that when we are coding in Scratch, we always start with our green flag. So hopefully we go through and we can see the first thing we run is say hello. I'm Big Ed for 4 seconds. And then we've got these funny little things through here. So what we call these are subroutines. So that allows us to be a little bit neater with our code and have a little bit more logic and structure to it. So we can see that first one there is ask name. So basically what that's telling us is we are going to go over and run the subroutine called ask name. So now we come through, and so the next thing we're going to do is ask the name, wait for the response, and set that answer to the variable name. And then we're going to say back hello to the name that's just entered in for 2 seconds. Once we've done that, we come back across into our sequence. So we've got another subroutine called how are you? So now we come back over here and we start with that one. And again, we go through, are you okay? And wait. Set health, so that's another variable to answer. And we're checking. So now we're looking at whether that answer is equal to yes. If it is equal to yes, then we say good, glad to hear it. And then we go on and add, I have another question. So if the answer is anything other than yes, this little if statement is ignored. And we go straight to, I have another question. Then we come back over here, and the last subroutine is our birthday. So we're going to come down to birthday. Then that said, I ask for the question and add the answer into that birthday variable. Again, if I have the variable equaling yes, then we say happy birthday. Otherwise, we say a very happy unbirthday. So this is now our if then else statement. So we have to do one of these two things each time. They're a little bit different to the one over here. And we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. So hopefully you've gone through and you've had a discussion. We're going to have a run of it and see what actually happens. So we're going to open that up and then follow the code through. So we've opened that up. We're going to now go and remix. So now you've got a copy to work with. So we're going to go through and run this program and see if what we predict is actually going to happen. So I start, he says, hello, I'm Big Ed from the year 2182. Now we'll go straight into that subroutine and ask for the name. So we can see which one's running with that little yellow box around it here. So I'm going to put in, I'm just going to call myself Frank in this case. So Frank is there, and then it goes over to the next subroutine here. How are you? So over here, are you okay? Now I'm going to say yes. We can see he goes straight into good, glad to hear it. I have another question. It's my birthday today. Is it your birthday today as well? And we can say no, it's not. So then he says a very unhappy birthday. So I just want to check these two because there's two responses that could be here. So I'm going to click on that. Are you okay? And I'm going to say no this time. And what we should see, it skips straight over good, glad to hear it. Now over here, if I say yes, it should say happy birthday this time instead of a very unhappy birthday to you. So we can see that is all works. So these two things here are a little bit different to what we've experienced or looked at previously. So now we can take a moment to discuss those responses, and we're going to move down to the investigate. Okay, let's have a look at these questions now. So in the investigate, we come down. So we've already talked about these. These are called subroutines. They allow us to organize our code a little bit nicer. So this basically tells us there's a small selection or sequence of code that when we call this, it will run. And it allows us to organize our code a little bit more efficiently and make it a whole lot easier to repeat and reuse pieces of code. So let's have a look at how it might look without it. If we are using our code here without these subroutines, I would take those calls out and it would be having all of this all in one row. So it works, but it's a lot harder to identify where each piece of the code is. And if I wanted to reuse a piece of the code, it makes it a lot harder because I'd need to then copy and paste and change things out. So using the subroutines makes it a whole lot easier to be able to follow and reuse pieces of code. I'll put that back to how it should be. Let's keep going through these. So then this one here is where we've got an if statement, so a conditional. We're checking if this condition is met. If this condition is met, then we run the piece of code within it. So if health is yes, then we run that code. Otherwise, we just skip past it and we keep going through it. And we talked about and went through what happens when these ones go, so I'm not going to talk about those again. We keep having a look through. Now these two blocks of codes are both if statements, but they operate a little bit differently. So the first one here is just an if statement. So what we spoke about before, if that condition is met, then we run the piece of code inside it. If it's not met, we skip it completely and just keep going. The difference is the second block here is an if-else statement. So one of these two have to be run every time. So if the weather is warm, we run this one. Otherwise, we have to run that one and then we keep moving. If we look at here, the if statements would be, or if blocks would be found in control, and these conditional blocks would be found in operators. Now we're going to go in and start the modifying. So we look at the first part, we've got what they call an Easter egg, hidden functionality. So we're going to be doing the ask name, and we're changing it so that if the user says their name is Ed, we say that's awesome. So let's go and do that now. So we're going to come in to the ask name. So what we need to do before we say this, we need to then go in and add a control. So we're going to use an if statement. We're going to put that in before that. And we're going to then go into the looks and find the say hello. We need an operator, so down here, and we need the equals. So then I'm going to grab the name and put that in there as well. So if Ed is equal to that, then I'm going to go through and say, what an awesome name, if I can type. So now I've got that ready to go. Let's go check what we need to do next. Okay, now we're looking at the next one, the how are you? So if they respond no to are you okay, we're going to say, oh no, hope you feel better soon. It should still say good otherwise, so let's go do that. So we're coming back over here. We are checking over here. So what we want to do now is we're going to go back into control and we're going to grab an if else. And that one we're going to use here. Oh no, actually we don't want to use an if else because they could say anything else, but we only want it if it says no. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to put that in. So we've got two if statements in this case. So health is no, because they're not dependent on each other. If they say yes, we do this. But if they say something else, we just ignore it completely. If we had to anything other than yes, we'd say we could use the if then else. Oh no, hope you feel better soon. Okay, so now that's going to do what we need for the next one. So the next one we're looking at is we want Ed or Big Ed to be able to say that same message. So let's go fix that up now too. Okay, back over to the what's your name. We're going to now use our operators again. We need an or. So we're going to grab that out. We're going to duplicate that. So now we have, it's either Big Ed or Ed. Allows us to be able to check that. So we are now through all of the activities that we need for selection.